a grant writer is like being a fairy godmother, or at least that's what Denise was told after she presented her funding research to her colleagues at her nonprofit. Denise Tucker reinvented herself, going back to school to earn her bachelor's in writing at age 40. She found grant writing intriguing, networked with some old colleagues, and pretty soon one thing led to another, and she was in a full-time grant writing position at a nonprofit. Within her first year, she had won over $500,000 for her organization, and this is only just the beginning. We dive into imposter syndrome, the importance of mindset work, and so much more. Meet Denise. Welcome, Denise. I am so honored to be speaking with you today.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. Well, I was honored to be asked.
Thinking back to your life pre-collective and really pre-grant writing, what drew you to grant writing?
Towards my 4-year degree that ended up being in English with an emphasis in creative writing. At some point, I realized I was driven to be a writer and had to do that. I had been an administrative assistant for over 20 years. I didn't want to go back into that. And with some volunteering for several organizations, actually in Portland, Oregon, grant writing came on my radar. I wish I could remember the exact moment, but I remember doing several informational interviews, essentially. And I talked to she was a PR person and their grant writer for an organization called the Children's Center, I believe, in Portland. And I thought, okay, I think this is what I'm going to focus on. It took me another 5-6 years to finish earning my degree, but I always kept that as my focus and started adding more technical writing classes. I even managed to get a grant writing class in there towards the very end. So that's what put grant writing on my radar. It's very my practical side, my creative side.
I really admire people who go back to school later in life because it's incredibly difficult. And you've talked about, the amount of time. It's just not the amount of time. It's all of the other things that are happening in your life. I just admire you. And I'm so grateful for you to share that part of your story too.
Oh, thank you. I think I started going back when I was about 40. We're never too old.
My mom went back to school at, I think she was 50 and totally reinvented her career. And as we were kind of going to college at the same time and watching my mom reinvent herself was so amazing because it just proved to me, yes, it doesn't matter what age we are. We get to choose the journey that we're on. When you joined the collective, you were already an in-house grant writer. Do you want to talk about how you landed that job?
Yes, absolutely. It's a fun story and it speaks to how important those informational interviews are, or to reach out to people, because I did several of them and it was through networking that I graduated in June of 22. It took me a while to, because it had been 10 years since I looked for a job, and suddenly it's not just a resume, it's your LinkedIn profile. So I was trying to build that. I think I was up to 5 network connections by the time I really started digging in, and I had been trying to find something via the LinkedIn process and just wasn't having any luck. And so I asked a friend and she said, well, start digging into my connections. She said, I actually found my job through a recruiter, and I happened to know a recruiter that I had worked with. We were both customer service reps for a printing company, 10 to 12 years prior. And she had moved on to recruiting. And she said, well, I don't specialize in grant writers, but I know a few people. Let me ask around for you. And within less than a month, she had an interview for me. It was incredible because the woman I interviewed with, she's the CEO. She had been the main grant writer for almost 30 years with this company, and she's wanting to retire. She had taught a course and used Meredith's book. Yeah. And so she gifted that to me within the first couple of weeks. I wasn't a trained grant writer by any stretch. I'd worked on a few. I'd done some volunteer work. I'd worked on live grants, of course, part of a nonprofit curriculum. That's when I started digging in and exploring and going into the YouTube videos. And I needed something. I need to ground my process because I couldn't rely on her. She was there, but she had her own position. And like I said, we kind of knew, we didn't know how much. And I told her from the outset, if this becomes too much for you, trying to teach me how to write grants and about this process, that's why this is a fantastic investment. And it has been.
Not a lot of bosses and employees get to have that relationship where you get to be very transparent. So that's very, very cool. And I'm grateful you landed in such a great spot. When we're doing something new, especially like you're not trained, learning on the fly, you're in the middle of a million moves, all new team. What did it feel like to join this organization and just start doing grant writing?
Can't remember where I picked it up. If you say something with enough confidence, people are going to believe you. Probably from my dad, who was a used car salesman. That aside, I absolutely suffered from the imposter syndrome, especially several months in when I hadn't had my own winning grant. grant. I had this kind of success in school, and I recognized it was just school. I had done volunteer work, just a tiny bit, worked on a successful grant. So I had that in the back of my mind, and it was just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Thankfully, when that sense of being a fraud or an imposter really set in, I had joined the collective by that time, thankfully. Yeah. That saying, misery loves company. It's terrible, but it's so true. Like, oh, okay. So, these 500 other people have all been through this. They can all speak to that, but also coming out on the other side. And even still, even after several winning grants, a couple of big ones, I still have that sense of when a rejection comes in, that is a tough process.
1,000%. It doesn't go away. We have more tools at our disposal to use quicker, faster, with more support as we go through our journeys. But there are days that I wake up and I'm like, how am I doing this? It's real no matter who you talk to. I can't imagine that even the president of the United States doesn't walk into rooms and go like, who put me here? I think it's real on every level.
It absolutely is.
One of the things that often we hear from in-house grant writers is, okay, I joined and then I really loved the funding research process, or I really loved the grant writing process. What I appreciate about your story is that you like the mindset work. And so I would love to hear about how the belief shifting part of our onboarding modules helped you in that imposter syndrome and how you worked through that process.
Oh, caveat here. My sister is an energy healer.
Love it. Yep. So we're very familiar with this world.
I really appreciate how in those onboarding modules, Meredith presents it very pragmatically, for lack of a better word. I went back and I did all the onboarding training again and saw that process. Thought, oh, I wish I would have done that months ago. I strongly encourage my fellow unicorns to just review that if they're feeling in that place of that valley of despair. One of my lowest moments where I think I was 6 or 7 months in, I thought, this is it. I need to make this decision. So I recognize that we can have, whether you call it blocks or limiting beliefs or just dysfunctional beliefs, we can be very verbally abusive to ourselves. It was a Monday morning in early October. There were tears. I journaled. I tried breathing. I tried yoga. I was trying everything. I came across this process I've used in the past. It's called EFT, or Emotional Freedom Technique. And what Meredith describes is very, very similar to that. It's taking and recognizing and honoring, okay, I have this belief that I'm not good enough, that I won't be able to make money with my grant writing, that I'm not worthy. But being unworthy is huge. I think we all suffer from that. I took all of those beliefs and reprocessed them as positive. We spent half hour, 45 minutes, and allowing that positive to flow in. By that afternoon, I'm feeling better anyway. I get this email from a foundation that I had submitted an LOI to in July for a program that I already had to tell my supervisor, I'm so sorry, I don't think I'm going to be able to find the funding for it in time. But she was mildly miffed because the person I was trying to find the funding for had already scheduled everything. He scheduled the trainer. So all of that money that hadn't been budgeted for was already being spent. But this email came through and they said, this is very rare, but we feel that the program is so significant that we're going to fund it off the LOI.
Wow.
To me, speaks about how powerful it is to really stop and honor the negative, acknowledge it, and let it go.
You're right that all of us face those, but then to speak it out loud in a public way is very powerful. And so I'm grateful for your vulnerability, and thank you so much for sharing that you did this process so that you could unlock whatever needed to unlock. What are you most proud of in your grant writing journey so far?
Just what I talked about, that I overcame that moment. Oh, I'm so glad I just kept going and didn't walk away. The Tuesday before Thanksgiving, I had 2 grants. One of them was the biggest one I had written thus far. It was a $200,000 grant. I got the notice that I'd received that. And then an hour later, I got the notice that I received another, I think, $25,000 grant. There was this high for a while. And I think that my persistence.
A lot of times grant writers and their executive directors are saying you need to prove something within 6 months. You need to prove something within a year. In your experience, where was the sweet spot timing wise, where you had learned enough to be confident in the writing of the proposals, and then you had enough time to actually prove and see the momentum happening?
When I started, I did not know. I thought, okay, I'll give myself a year. I was already feeling that very low moment of, was it at 6 months? So I had given myself 7 months, not deliberately. And that's when the upswing kind of.
We talk about how people need 6 months in any job to really start to feel that momentum, to start to feel things shake. I love your story because it does prove that we have to give things some time. There is this time that has to go into it before we can see things materialize. And I'm really grateful that your boss kind of held you in that space, that she knew that time was okay.
I am too. I'm very thankful for that.
What is the work that you get to do on a daily basis in this nonprofit?
The last couple of days I've been working on the newsletter. It's kind of fun to have something a little different, that it's a creative endeavor and there's a beginning and an end. It was before I even polished my funding strategy. In fact, I should submit it here within the next couple of days. I know it's been almost a year since I started the collective, but
that's okay.
Anyway, that's how long it took me. And it's an actual live funding strategy that I'm working on for one of our projects. I presented it to our statewide supervisor meeting several months ago, and I had several people follow up with emails how impressed they were. They had no idea. The only downside was now they think I'm the fairy godmother with a wand. Immediately received with the following weeks several requests. The funding strategy, I have several going on right now. And that's one of the pieces that the training with the grant writing program, the Learn Grant Writing program, has been phenomenal, helping me really refine that.
I do think that that's why we call people unicorns, or why the term unicorns resonates with so many grant writers, is because it is magical in some sense. Our wands don't work immediately, but when they work, they are so impactful that it is this type of magic that you get to create. Like 200,000? I don't know the size of your nonprofit, but that's a giant win.
Yes, it was. Had another one that was one I pushed for, which is like 220,000. It was adding a client portal to our website so clients could access their accounts. Our CIO was going to be the lead on the project, and the CEO were kind of they were like, well, I'm like, you know what? I've got it all together. Let me just submit it and see. And we won.
So you've raised a cool $500,000 for a nonprofit within your first year of being a grant writer. Pretty incredible. I just want you to toss that imposter syndrome one out the window, but then two, celebrate this incredible momentum. Are there ways that you do find ways to celebrate yourself and the organization?
I do. Had to shift how I celebrate. The big grant, it's called the CADC program. It's for our clinicians to become certified alcohol drug counselors. I chose a different way to celebrate. So that was a rethinking of what I would typically go to. Tea Project, that was champagne.
Let's do some rapid fire questions. What is one word to describe your dream lifestyle?
Freedom.
Next vacation spot?
England.
Favorite podcast?
Yeah, I'm not a podcast gal.
What do you listen to?
I love Enya.
What are you reading right now?
Oldie but a goodie. It's called Jitterbug Perfume.
Last TV show you binged?
The Gentleman.
What's your superpower?
I'm a middle-aged woman, so invisibility.
Is it nice, or do you wish that there was more visibility?
It comes up a lot. I actually wrote an entire creative nonfiction essay about it that was pretty funny.
Send that to us. We'll link it in this description. I think people will love that.
Oh, seriously? Okay. Yeah, it's not something I've necessarily felt myself. Like some women talk about it, but maybe it was because I had lower expectations about wanting to feel seen. I would say my persistence, it took me 10 years to get through school. There were several times I could have just said, no, I need to do something else. And my goal was to get my degree, and I'm going to do this. So my superpower is persistence.
I like the commentary on the invisibility, adding the real commentary, even if it's in jest, and also the advantages and how all of it blends together. Very cool. I would love to read that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Denise. I so appreciate your vulnerability, your tenacity, your fire, and your humor. All of it is just such a stellar package. And I'm so grateful that you are out here making such a huge impact in the world. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Well, absolutely. The Learn Grant Writing Collective has been a huge part of that.
Awesome.
So
Thank
glad
you.
you're there.